It's Season 6, Game 99. We're in Boston at the bottom of the 10th. The score is tied 11-11. It's the Flowers' last chance to make the playoffs, but the visiting Breckenridge Jazz hands aren't making it easy for them. There are no outs and a runner on first, but with Moses Mason at bat, nothing's guaranteed to go as planned. How did we get to this point? Why are we in extra innings? Why do the Flowers' playoff chances depend on the last game of the season? In order to understand that, we need to rewind. The Boston Flowers weren't a bad team, just an inconsistent one. They made the playoffs in seasons 1 and 2, but a string of weather events and a blessing drought quickly shot them in the foot. The rest of their division got better, and the Flowers got worse. In order to be contenders again, they needed a big shakeup, and they got one in the Season 5 elections. Since the return of Internet League Blaseball, the leagues had been good and evil, but in Season 5, the high filter decree changed everything. It's theorized that all of the decrees this season would have rearranged the divisions, but high filter had a particularly cruel twist. Teams were sorted based on their record from the previous season. The sub-leagues were split into wild and mild with high and low divisions. Wild High was the top 5 teams from the previous season, Mild High was teams number 6 through 10, Mild Low was teams number 11 through 15, and the Wild Low was the bottom 5. The Wild Low teams weren't necessarily bad teams. They were mostly outmatched by their division competition. And okay, some of them were pretty bad, but that made the shuffle more important. In their new division, with most of their games against the other teams at the bottom of the barrel, it was possible for some of them to scrape together some wins. Which brings us back to the Flowers. In Season 5, they placed 17th in the league, putting them solidly in the Wild Low division. But against their new competition, they found themselves blossoming. Their biggest challenge was the weather. Caligula Lotus was incinerated on day 31. The team persisted only to get hit hard on day 80 with feedback. Fan favorite Beck Whitney was traded to the Miami Dale in exchange for Han Fox. The Wild Low put up a good fight, but it became clear that they were still outmatched by Wild High. The Baltimore Crabs in particular dominated the division, the sub-league, and the league. They ended the season with a record-setting 80 wins, making them the front-runners to win the whole Internet Series. That meant the rest of the Wild League was fighting for the remaining 3 playoff spots. The Breckenridge Jazz hands were able to clinch second seed, and the San Francisco Lovers weren't far after them in third. But on day 99, the last game of the season, the 4th slot was still undecided. Something this last minute was unheard of. The race was closer than it had any right to be. And in those days, the stakes were even higher than normal. The rule guaranteeing that one team from each division would make the playoffs didn't exist yet. That meant there was a chance for a division to get shut out of the playoffs entirely. This later happened in Season 7, when all 4 Wild League playoff teams were from Wild High. And for a while, that looked like it would be the case in Season 6. The New York Millennials in Wild High were neck and neck with the Flowers all season. Going into Game 99, the Mills had 51 wins, and the Flowers had 50. But the Flowers had divine favor on their side. If the Flowers and the Mills had the same record, the Flowers won the tiebreaker. The stakes were simple. If the Millennials wanted to make the postseason, the Flowers needed to lose. If the Flowers wanted to make the postseason, they needed to win. And the Mills needed to lose. And then the Mills lost. The Firefighters took Game 99, 7-4. That left the Mills at 51 wins, an uncomfortable place to be in. They were good league champs in Seasons 3 and 4, and they made the playoffs in Season 5. But they were slipping, and now they had to fight for their shot, just like everyone else. And their shot, just like the Flowers' postseason shot, was staked entirely on whether or not the Flowers won this game. Their opponents, the Breckenridge Jazz hands, have already clinched the 2nd seed in the playoffs. But it hasn't been an easy run. Jazz hands fans have dubbed this season Open Mic Night because they saw a lot of players moving in and out. It started in the Season 5 election, when a blessing sent fan favorite August Sky to the Dallas Stakes. In the following season, the Jazz hands lost 3 players to feedback: Valentine Games to the Mills, Hendricks Richardson to the Sunbeams, and Comfort Septemberish to the Spies. And the cherry on top, on day 84, fan favorite and recent addition Randall Marijuana was incinerated and replaced by Steph Weeks. Despite all the changes, the Jazz Hands didn't have much to worry about. They'd been a dominant team since the beginning. In fact, the Jazz Hands made the Evil League playoffs every single time. They'd never missed a postseason, and they weren't about to start. Game 99 wouldn't change much for them, but it could change everything for the Flowers. Going into the game, the Flowers were slightly favored, with 52% odds of winning. That's thanks in no small part to King Weatherman, the team's best pitcher. But odds are based on stats, not performance, and this season, Weatherman hadn't been performing. They had an ERA of 5.53, which is not only miserably high, it's the highest ERA they've had to date. Of course, that's nothing compared to the Jazz Hands pitcher, Egan Harrison's ERA of 6.36, and that wasn't even unusual for them. Harrison's career average ERA was 6.23, making this season solidly middle of the road for them. If Blaseball is a game of pitchers, it looked like Weatherman would win. Easy. But Weatherman didn't win easy. In fact, the Jazz Hands scored 3 runs in the top of the first. By the 4th inning, they had a commanding 5-0 lead. The Flowers rallied time and time again, but for every run they scored, Weatherman would give one up. The Flowers scored twice in the bottom of the 4th, the Jazz Hands scored twice in the top of the 5th. The Flowers rallied with 3 runs in the bottom of the 6th, only for the Jazz Hands to do the same in the top of the 7th. By the time they reached the 8th inning, it looked all but decided. The score was 11-5 Breckenridge. But then, in the bottom of the 8th, a miracle happened. A small one, but an important one. The Flowers drew a couple walks. One fielder's choice and one ground out later, Gloria Bugsnax hit a 3-run home run, making a dent in the deficit. The score was 11-8. Another small miracle happened in the 9th. Margarito Nava drew a walk and managed to steal second. Nick Winkler drew another walk, and Castillo Turner hit a single, driving Nava all the way home. 11-9. There were 2 runners on base when Han Fox stepped up. Fox, the newest member of the team, slammed a double, giving both Turner and Winkler the chance to get home. And just like that, the game was tied, 11-11. And now we're here. Bottom of the 10th. Gloria Bugsnax just hit a single. They're not an original team member. Bugsnax replaced Mateo Carpenter after an incineration in Season 4, just days after Moses Mason, the current batter, was brought to Boston by a feedback swap. Mason isn't what you would call a great batter. They started their career as solidly middling on the LA Unlimited Tacos before feedback brought them to Boston. On this team, Mason is decidedly below average. This season, their batting average is .23, and their OPS is a measly .636. They're not exactly the person you want in this situation. But here they are, stepping up to bat. In a way, it's a perfect match. Egan Harrison isn't a great pitcher, and Moses Mason isn't a great batter. Harrison throws a ball, a strike, and 2 more balls. The count is 3-1. Right now, the smart decision would be to take the walk. Batting after Mason are Inez Owens and Margarito Nava, both of whom are better hitters. Swinging at any pitches is risky, especially considering Mason holds the team record for most double plays this season. The Flowers' postseason chances, their first chance after 3 seasons at the bottom of the good league, are in Moses Mason's hands. Welcome to a moment in history.